Good morning, Europe. Good afternoon, Asia. On behalf of the ASEM Education Secretariat, I would like to wish you a very warm welcome to a second 2021 online workshop. I'm Emilie de Gelder, and together with my colleague Nadia Reinders, I coordinate the ASEM Education Secretariat, which is currently hosted by Belgium. We are delighted to see so many of you with us today. About 70 people registered for today's events. About half have already joined us, and I'm sure that the other half will join us shortly. That's even more than our first workshop, so we're truly happy that some of you thought it was interesting and came back for more. Must mean that we did something right. This workshop is the second of a series of four thematic workshops organized in the framework of the ASEM Education Strategy 2030, to which many of you have already contributed. So thank you for that. Similarly to our first event, the objective of this workshop will again be twofold. On the one hand, we would like to showcase relevant Asia, Europe, and ASEM education initiatives. And on the other, we are hoping to collect valuable input for the action plan, which focuses on the implementation of the 2030 strategy and is meant to lead to concrete actions to make sure that the strategy is actually implemented. It doesn't remain wishful thinking. Today, we're going to focus on the second strategic objective identified for the next decade and address the following question. How can the ASEM education process, how can ASEM education partners and stakeholders contribute to improve connectivity between Asia and Europe by boosting inclusive and balanced mobility and exchanges? Today, we're going to adopt a very broad definition of exchanges, meaning that we will take a closer look at different types of exchanges, not only physical mobility, but also virtual exchange, collaborative online international learning, also known as COIL, as well as blended learning and mobility. We will also try to take into account various contexts, such as exchanges at education and higher education institutions level, at the workplace, in non-formal settings, and so on. As you have probably guessed from the title of the event, we will dedicate special attention to inclusiveness to make sure that as many people as possible can benefit from these opportunities, and exchange are not a one-way flow, but both ASEM regions actually benefit from them. Today, I would like to encourage you to be as proactive as possible. Please use the chat box to interact with us and our distinguished speakers. Don't hesitate to ask for the floor during Q&A session or comment in the chat. I would like to end this brief introduction by wishing you a pleasant workshop and exciting discussions. Please let us prove together that despite current travel restrictions, meaning online exchanges are still possible. Unfortunately, our scheduled keynote speaker, Alexander Knoth, Head of Section Digitization and designated Chief Digital Officer at the German Academic Exchange Service, could not be with us today and sends his apologies. Lucky for us, however, his colleague, Dagmar Willems, has kindly agreed to step in at the last minute. So without further ado, I would now like to give her the floor for what I'm sure will be an extremely inspiring and instructive keynote. Dagmar, thank you for agreeing to replace Alexander at such short notice. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction and for the opportunity to join you this morning or this afternoon at the Education Action Plan 2030 workshop. I'm looking forward to sharing with you an outlook on virtual exchange and on new formats of teaching and digital cooperation today. So here's a quick outlook on what you can expect in the next 30 minutes. So we're going to first start off by looking at the state-of-the-art virtual exchange, what is out there, then at the role of virtual exchange in mobility, and then what measures may help to pave the way to successfully establish virtual exchange. And then hopefully we will have time to discuss or answer any questions that have occurred. So let's get started. Currently, multilateralism is under pressure. At the same time, international collaboration in education and science is needed more than ever to solve existential challenges. Globalization and technological developments have changed our private and work lives. New skills are needed. At a broad level, it has become essential to be able to collaborate in culturally diverse international teams with technological means. Collaboration becomes the new currency. And of course, there are limits for physical exchange as a mean to foster those skills. There are limits to ability or willingness. There are limits to financial resources. Last but not least, the current climate crisis has put like classical instruments of mobility under pressure, especially if it comes to short-term mobilities. And travel restrictions due to the pandemic have raised awareness of the vulnerability of the current system. But luckily, technology can also help us in face those challenges, because internationalization and exchange is more than physical mobility. It is about connecting worlds. It is the preparation on the home campuses, like with intercultural trainings, language courses, or service learning offerings. But it's also about building bridges to the world with international programs and now also with virtual exchange offerings. They need pillars like the faculty and the technology, and of course, they have demands for administrative support. There are like classical hurdles like technophobia, bureaucracy, and the initial costs to establish virtual exchange. But I advocate it's worth overcoming those, because virtual exchange can provide a broad pathway for exchange. It can enable many students, irrespective of their prospect of going abroad, to gain valuable intercultural experiences. And it can offer a two-way street because it allows for mutual intercultural experiences. But what actually constitutes virtual exchange? I bring you a definition from O'Dowd. He says virtual exchange involves the engagement of groups of learners in extended periods of online intercultural interaction and collaboration with partners from other cultural context or geographical location as an integrated part of education and under the guidance of an educator or expert facilitator. This is quite a long definition, so I again have put here on the left-hand side for you the central elements. We have groups of learners, extended periods, it's online, it's intercultural, it has interaction and collaboration components, it's integrated into education, and it's under the guidance of an expert. What might this actually look like? There are diverse forms and terminologies out there, kind of state of the art, and what we want to look at here is the shared syllabus approach. It's most prominently featured and supported by the Sunny Coyle Center, which was already mentioned here. And this is a model of what international virtual academic collaboration might then actually look like. We have two courses, Course A and Course B, at different institutions from different countries, maybe from different disciplines. We have a cooperation at the teachers level, so the course is jointly designed and developed, the curriculum, the course materials, and the course is jointly conducted. The courses are integrated into the curricula at each of the participating institutions. And there's also a collaboration level at the student cooperation. So during the run of the course, the students jointly discuss topics, work on projects, share material. And at the end of the course, there can be credits given for the students, each of them at their home institution. If we zoom in further on the interaction at student level, the focus is clearly on the collaboration of the learners. We have here learning groups that are formed from students from both institutions. Learners are able to share material, to discuss, to give feedback, or to jointly develop learning artifacts. And here it is very important to create the technical surrounding, like learning management system integration, and the course design suited so that it enables communication between the learners, collaboration, and the possibility of mutual feedback. As mentioned before, like one of the major topics of this session is inclusiveness. So when setting up these kind of environments, it is important to design for inclusiveness and not to establish new barriers now that we are pivoting to the digital space. It's about like easy navigation, not to put up language hurdles. It's about considering time zones, availability of bandwidth and access to equipment, for example. To explore the benefits of virtual exchange in our context, let us look at some examples. Virtual exchange project Teaching for Critical Digital Literacy is an example. A German university, the TU Kaiserslautern, established a new collaboration with 2 universities from Singapore to create a virtual exchange master course together. Students here learn about and discuss topics like algorithm, fake news, and big data, discovering culturally different perspectives on these issues. Through virtual exchange, they can gain a better understanding of the cultural perspectives on the topics by discussing jointly in mixed groups. The objective of the project is to create a virtual master course with an additional physical student exchange program, which should take place in Singapore. So besides interacting with peers abroad virtually, by using a blended mobility approach, students also get the possibility to experience a physical exchange. So how is a project like that structured? We have here on the left-hand side an administrative platform with an integrated learning management system. The project is then divided in 3 phases. The development of the blended learning format, the digital content, it needs to be uploaded to the learning management system, and the courses need to be integrated into the curricula. Very interesting is the execution part though, because originally the course was planned to be synchronous, meaning the students interact and learn at the same time, for example, via video conferencing tools. However, as the time difference between Germany and Singapore became an obstacle for the organizers, they decided to choose an asynchronous course, meaning much of the content would be able to be worked on independent of the ability to be at the same in the same virtual space at the same time. The digital content created by the students will also be integrated in the administrative platform. Originally, the physical summer school that was planned to be hosted in Singapore was cancelled or postponed due to Corona. And the third phase of the project is the evaluation. So expert meetings are planned to evaluate and further roll out the approach. Then we can look at another example, the DigiChem Lab. This is a collaboration which has been going on for quite some time. It's the collaboration between Paderborn and Qingdao, China. And this really strong collaboration has added a new layer to their partnership through this virtual exchange project. What was already in place is that Chinese chemistry students can finish their last 4 semesters in Paderborn. German students, on the other hand, can take part in an exchange program at the Sino-German Eco Park in Gyeongdo. The objective of the virtual exchange project is to create a virtual reality learning environment, which gives students of chemistry the chance to make first experiences in a professional laboratory to acquire the practical and technical skills for their future profession. The virtual reality learning environment creates the possibility for the inclusion of students who do not have access to professional laboratory surroundings. The virtual reality learning environment is enabling students of both partner universities to learn and collaborate together in this environment. And this helps also to prepare them for later on physical mobility. The institution used virtual exchange to intensify an already existing flourishing cooperation between institutions. So we can see virtual exchange can have many forms and is diversifying as new technologies come along and can be integrated. For example, the integration of virtual reality enables hands-on training, which might be interesting when developing virtual exchange offerings for non-higher education settings, for vocational training, for applied sciences, or for professional trainings. So to sum up briefly some of the advantages seen in those examples. International exchange is more than physical mobility. Virtual exchange can support existing and create new internationalization activities. It offers a broader reach and attract different target groups. It can broaden and strengthen partnerships, networks, and collaborations by making them more permanent. It holds the potential for skill development, both at a student and at a teacher level. And it's making international collaboration more resilient. So that's the first half. Now that I hopefully have you all convinced of the opportunities that virtual exchange holds, now comes the tricky question. How do we create the conditions to make use of virtual exchange? For that, we need to look at the system virtual exchange exists in. Let us go back to the statement from O'Dowd we saw earlier. Here we can identify some stakeholders and dimensions of virtual exchange that should be considered. As stakeholders in blue, we can identify learners, teachers, curriculum officers, and institutional partnerships. Elements of virtual exchange in orange highlight technical, organizational, and didactical dimensions. When it comes to tapping into the digitally supported internationalization of your curricula, the adjacent model helps with the reflection and self-assessment. Internationalization can be achieved if technological, didactical, organizational, cultural, and economic aspects from different institutions fit together. Also, the different levels have to be considered. There's an individual action, but there's also the institutional layer, and from there, regional, national, or in the best case, a global context to be considered. Any project is driven by the commitment of those involved at the operational level, but it can only have a sustainable impact if it's embedded in part of a larger internationalization strategy. What can be done in order to create good conditions for this entanglement of internationalization and digitalization? We know from current research and well-documented good practice examples that higher education authorities, as well as presidents and rectors' offices, have an important role in getting change management processes started. So there's a top-down component for sure. But nevertheless, bottom-up initiatives are needed too. Concrete individual activities are essential to move forward. They are important in their function as role models, to motivate others, and to use experimental spaces for innovation. In a recent workshop on virtual exchange with participants from 30 German higher education institutions, we have discussed obstacles for the implementation of virtual exchange. Most obstacles dealt with the challenges of implementing virtual exchange at an organizational level. Here you see a couple of examples, which I only want to pick out a few. For example, there were different semester schedules and time zones, which were a challenge in implementing the virtual exchange scenarios. There are also data and privacy issues, especially also when it comes to finding tools to virtually collaborate with. And then it's quite time intensive to prepare and accompany those courses and to consult with the learners. And this time was in many cases not being counted as work time. So the lecturers had to sacrifice their free time just because they believe in the concept. So what can be done to help to get those hurdles out of the way? DAAD last year established a program to help higher education institutions. It's called International Virtual Academic Collaboration, and it has 5 main goals. The focus is on establishing digital collaboration formats for students who work together to overcome disciplinary and intercultural boundaries. It supports also the development of digital skills among university staff and students. It supports cross-university digitization of processes in study, teaching, and mobility. Another goal is increasing the reach of intercultural experience to target groups for whom physical mobility is not feasible. And last but not least, fostering a community of practice is part of the program. With this program design, there was a high demand. We had 122 project applications within 1 month, and now there are 61 projects funded. Quite interestingly, 23 projects between German higher education institutions and non-European ASEM members. So quite a high percentage already. So in the preparation, I looked at the strategic objective this session is dedicated to. Enhancing connectivity between Asia and Europe by boosting inclusive and balanced mobility and exchanges. So if we pull the statement apart to recap how virtual exchange can support this objective, I think we find a lot of valuable contributions. So enhancing connectivity. Virtual exchange can forge new and deeper connections between institutions, staff, and regions. If we look at the boosting, virtual exchange can enable more students to have intercultural experiences. Inclusive, virtual exchange can enable previously not included target groups. And balanced, it offers a two-way street for exchange, and it might even spike the interest for physical mobility from Europe to Asia and help to establish a more balanced exchange. Okay, so what can we do to stimulate virtual exchange? Here are a few actionable items on policy level and at an institutional level. There's the possibility to fund support measures at the institutional level. Also at the policy level, there's the possibility to foster network building and the exchange of in communities of practice, to continue the policy dialogue, especially to work on terms of standards of quality assurance recognition, organizational agreements for digital formats, and perhaps also to look out of the higher education realm and look at partners from adjacent fields, different areas of education, and also maybe into industry and business as more application cases can develop. And at the institutional level, it's important to motivate the teachers. They have to be included as the foundation of virtual exchange because new formats are needed. There should be experimentation and co-development. The barriers should be set low to just get them started and to see the value for themselves and continue and adapt in the ways they need it. We need offerings to build competence, technical competence, didactical competence for virtual exchange. The offerings should be integrated into the curriculum, and virtual exchange should be built into a larger strategy so that there can be the national resources provided to actually put all these things forward. And last but not least, we need the partners to do this on a virtual level. So this is a quick overview of some tasks that might help to stimulate virtual exchange. I hope this provided you with inspiration for today's workshop. I'm happy now to exchange some thoughts with you and the audience and discuss open questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Willems, for this excellent and inspiring presentation, and also for your very concrete suggestions you made for the ASEM education process. I think that gives us all better insights in the potential of virtual exchanges to boost intercultural learning, collaboration, and exchanges between Europe and Asia. So as Ms. Willems announced, the floor is open now for questions. So I would like to invite all participants to put your question in the chat or to raise your hand to explain your question orally and grab your microphone. I see already, I think, 2 hands. Mr. De Decker, I think you were first. Please go ahead.
Actually, Mr. Sung was first, but it's all the same to me.
I'm sorry, I made a mistake.
Oh, okay.
By mistake, I clicked the button.
All right, then I can go ahead. Thank you very much, Ms. Willems, for your interesting presentation. I saw that DRD has put quite some financial support in allowing German universities to set up some virtual exchange projects. And I was wondering how you dealt with that's something that is also very clear from the strategy with regard to mobility in the ASEM context, that there is often imbalance between the potential resources available at both ends. And I was wondering how you dealt with that in this DRD pilot project with this focus on virtual mobility. Was there specific support also for the partners at the other end, or was it purely for the German institutions?
Yeah, so this is definitely a problem if there's like asymmetrical funding available. So actually, to create joint funding projects where the security is given that both institutions gain the same level of funding, similar, reflecting the needs at the two different countries, would be very helpful from our experience, because it is a big part of the issues in establishing those kind of collaborations.
It's a bit stuffy here.
So this was mainly so the funds dedicated by DAAD through the BMBF, so the German Ministry for Education, were dedicated to the German institutions.
And do you know how the matching funds were organized then from the partner institutions, so the non-German institutions that were also participating in this project?
I don't have it at the point, but I can try to get this information and get it to you later on, or to the entire group, of course.
That would be very helpful. Thank you very much, because from my experience also at Ghent University, that's one of the major challenges that we're confronted with in setting up this kind of cooperative models. But thank you.
Thank you for your question, Mr. De Decker, and thank you, Ms. Willems, for your answer. I'm looking to the chat box if there is another question. There are just some remarks, I think. Someone says, gives a virtual applause. Someone else says, I don't have a question at this moment, but the talk was very inspirational. Yeah, I think your presentation was very to the point and gave really some ideas on how we can further work on virtual exchanges and what could virtual exchanges mean for to indeed strengthen collaboration between European and Asian students. Okay, wait, I think there was one going to the other list. It's still Mr. Sung?
Yes. This time
you have a question now?
This time it's not a mistake.
Okay, go ahead.
Because Dr. De Decker raised one interesting point, that is the significant imbalances in infrastructures in the ASEM region. I mean, shall I call it a digital divide? Okay, I think if I use that wording, everybody would understand what I'm trying to say. And here we are talking about inclusiveness. Yes, it may be possible for those countries with good infrastructure and others, this could really enhance inclusiveness. But for other, rather less developed countries, it may go the other way around then. So I think we have to tackle that problem. I mean, we have to think about the way how we can assist those rather less developed ASEM members to more actively participate in this kind of new setting. Now, I don't want to take too much time, but I am a professor now, currently, and I taught during the last 3 semesters through online. I mean, It's a completely online process. And some of my students were foreign students, and they did not stay in Korea. One of them was in Moscow, the other one is in Shanghai. Well, in some cases, we had some technical problems, even with the China. So what I'm trying to say is that we should also think about the way we could support those rather less developed countries. Okay. So I just raised a topic for discussion.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
a very important issue, I think, and you can indeed call it a digital divide. That's something that we would have to take care of, because we have, it's not only within less developed countries, we also see it even in our country. It's something that you have always have to take care of. Ms. Willems, do you have specific measures or things in place to overcome the digital divide?
I think I agree that it is a very important topic, especially if we're talking about inclusiveness and if we are building this new world to make it as accessible, as broadly accessible as possible to actually harvest the possibilities that are in this. I think for many, in many parts, there still needs to be there has to be a change of understanding of what can be funded, because though we might see like the needs for funding, we have to have the flexibility to dedicate money to certain ways. So I think at the policy level, there needs to be a discussion or a decision about how to work on these issues, and also with regard to foreign policy and to the support for countries that might be less developed, to put a focus on the technical issues and to technical infrastructure, technical hardware, and maybe like find different support measures that are allowed for those regions that might not be needed in other regions, but to like tailor a more suited way to secure inclusiveness. That might be one approach to take.
Thank you. Just looking quickly if there are some other questions. I don't see any, except that quite some people agree that we have to take care of, if you are talking about inclusion, that we have to take care about the digital divide. Also, Therese refers to the presentation of Mr. Chakroun we had last week. But if there are no other questions at the moment, I think this is a very important discussion that we should also continue later on in the group sessions, in the breakout sessions. But first, I think we can move on now to the next part of our workshop. And I would like to introduce...
Somebody raised it.
I'm sorry. Okay. Go back to the participants list. Now, Mr. Janke raised his hand from the Lifelong Learning Platform. Yes, we have time for one more question.
Good morning, good afternoon. I didn't mean to interject if we want to move on. That's also perfectly fine. Otherwise, I'll just have a very short question. First of all, thank you very much to Dagmar Willems for this presentation. Also nice to see so many familiar faces here this morning, or well, this afternoon for some of us. I'm a little bit curious about how virtual exchanges have changed over time. Traditionally, well, maybe traditionally is the wrong word, because of course virtual exchanges are only around for a few years. But let's say the initial idea behind virtual exchanges was very focused on the intercultural aspect. So the intercultural learning that is facilitated by an expert. Now, virtual learning is around for decades already. Ever since we have the internet, or ever since we have the computer, there's virtual learning. So my curiosity very much stems from how is this virtual exchanges, so the preparation of groups maybe with different cultural backgrounds, how is this integrated in the actual daily learning, the daily online learning, whether that's blended or just virtual learning. So I'm curious how the DRD has framed this, and if there is some type of measures of success to make sure that virtual exchanges are not just online learning, but there is actually this intercultural component, which I think is so important when we bring together different cultures, especially when we look at Asia and Europe, where sometimes cultural differences in how to work together and so on can be quite significant. And I think such a preparation of intercultural understanding is almost necessary to cooperate successfully. So I'm curious how these virtual exchanges in the perspective of the DRD have changed over the year, and how is it just replacing virtual learning now, or is it a component, and how do we measure the success of this intercultural element of virtual learning?
Yeah, I think so far we do not have quite the measure outcomes, because we have started our first project and they are still running. But I think which is an important component to secure the intercultural component is actually to have like the reflective part as part of the online course as well. So to actually within the course and the content that is a part of the course, to have this reflective element. What does this actually do to us to work in this kind of setup, to engage with people from this region, to experience differences, to make this actually a part of the course, and also as a reflective part at the end of a course, to actually harvest what was experienced and make it explicit for participants, and very very prominently sculpture out the effects this has on the intercultural component.
Thank you.
Does this answer your question?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Willems. For the next session, I would like to introduce your moderator for that session. It's the panel of experts. Nina Knops, she will moderate that session. She is the Senior Desk Officer at the DAAD, the German Academic Exchange Service, or the same organization that Ms. Willems is working for. Nina is also part of our drafting committee of the 2030 Strategy and Action Plan, and she will introduce to you our panel of experts and will moderate this discussion afterwards. Please, Nina, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Nadia, and good morning, and also, of course, good afternoon to all of you. Each panelist will be given will give an input of about 10 to 15 minutes, and you have the opportunity to ask questions to the panelists via the chat function. Please do so at any time during the input. Questions concerning clarification will be answered right after the respective input. All other questions will be left to the end of the discussion after each panelist had the chance to provide their input, and we will go into a debate. Yeah, once again, please, at any time, if you have a question, you can ask it in a chat box. Otherwise, later on, you also have the chance to just raise your hand and ask the question in person. And now I'd like to welcome the panelists and thank them for making the time to join us today. On the panel, we first have Leonie Nagara-Chan. She is the Director of Education of the Education Department of the Asia-Europe Foundation, short of ASEF. And in this position, she focuses on education policies and higher education cooperations, as well as on activities in the field of lifelong learning, experiential learning, and skills development. Our second panelist is Dr. Sung. He is the Director General of the Secretariat of the ASEM Dual Fellowship Program, and he is also a Professor Emeritus at Kyung-Hae University in Korea. Our third panelist is Adrian Veal. He works in the International Cooperation Unit of the European Commission's DG for Education, Culture, Youth and Sports. and he primarily focuses on Erasmus Plus and its international opportunities, and in this area, particularly on cooperation with Asia. Our fourth panelist is Dr. Shantavit Suchatanon. She is the Center Director of the East Asian Ministers of Education Organization, Regional Center for Higher Education and Development, and in short, for Senior RIHED. She previously was the Deputy Secretary General of the Office of Higher Education Commission of the Ministry of Education, Thailand. Thank you all very much for being here. And Leonie, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Nina. I'm going to share my screen with you. I hope you can see it. Can you just give me a sign that you can see it?
Yes, yeah? We can see.
Wonderful. So my presentation consists of two parts. I understand that most of you are already familiar with ASEF. Some of you, however, are new to ASEM and ASEF's family. So I first introduce a little bit what our organization is doing, especially in the field of education. And then I go concretely into the ASEM Education Strategy 2030, looked up a few points which we have developed over the past year, and see and let you know how ASEF is contributing to realizing this strategy. So the first part on ASAF. As most of you know, we have been in the field for quite some time. We were created in 1997 and we are based in Singapore. We are an intergovernmental not-for-profit organization. And what is important to note is that we are the only permanently established institution of the Asia-Europe meeting process. We have a very clear mission, and that is to connect civil societies and governments of Asia and Europe for dialogue, for knowledge exchange, and for collaboration. In the education department, we deal with a quite wide range of stakeholders. We engage students, we engage teachers and educators, higher education leaders, edtech experts, and we work with you, the policymakers. Our focus is on inclusive and equitable access to education, opportunities, and lifelong learning already for quite some time. So we are quite happy that this theme has been picked up by the ASEM education process in general, and we have quite a number of activities which you will see later that support you in this direction. Interesting to note is also that many of our projects are official side events of ASEM summits, the foreign minister meetings and the education minister meeting. So this truly follows our mission to bring the civil societies and the government officials together. When we look at our outreach and impact, there are three areas where we think we are strong and we can bring added value to ASEM. The first one is knowledge creation, sharing and learning. The second one is engagement and visibility, and the third one is connectivity and collaboration. I listed here a few tangible and intangible outcomes, and later when the presentation is shared, you can go into more detail here. Now let's look into the ASEM Education Strategy 2030 and our concrete contributions and proposed actions, how we can realize it and what we can offer from our side. On the strategic objective 2, which we are talking about today, we are committing, or ASEM partners and stakeholders are committing to foster not only physical mobility, but also virtual mobility. And what we think is important to note here is also exchanges in all their forms as well as in various contexts. And this is exactly what ASEF is doing. We are promoting education opportunities in a non-formal education context, and most of our activities are hybrid events. So we fit here quite well. Let me show you how we will do this for young people. When we talk about youth, we focus on young people between 18 and 30 years old. I briefly go with you through a few projects. Many of you might know them because you receive frequent communication from us to engage young people in your respective countries in these activities. The first one is the Young Leaders Summit. This is our flagship project in youth. Why? Because it's linked to an ASEM summit. It's a thought and action leadership program, and the idea is not only knowledge building, but it is also concrete activities by young people on the ground. So they have to learn through 3 months or go through a 3-month course, which we conduct together with higher education institutions, training institutions, and then what they have learned, they realize through their own activities in their local communities. We have an edition this year on sustainable development in a post-COVID world. And I'm very happy to see and to note that a number of you have shared the open call, which we have sent out because we received feedback from young people that they actually applied for this project because of your promotion. The second project is Model ASEM. Also, this is an official youth side event, but this one is linked to the foreign minister meeting. This is a capacity building project for students where they fine-tune skills in diplomacy, negotiation, and public speaking. Here also, we provide an access to an invaluable network of young people across Asia and Europe, and also here we connect young people with foreign ministers directly. The third project which we have in our youth portfolio is the ASEM Summer University. This is a capacity building and global citizenship education project. Interestingly here is it's an interdisciplinary innovathon or hackathon competition. The idea is that we give case studies, we pose a social economic challenge, and the young people have to solve this over a certain period of time. So we hope here to create awareness and promotion of ASEM priorities as well as the SDGs. The next one, it's a hybrid activity, takes place also this year on sustainable urbanization with a focus on South Asian countries, Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan. What do we do for education professionals, both in the teaching and learning sector as well as in higher education? I believe that you are most familiar with this project. It's the ASEM Regional Conference on Higher Education, ARC. This is the official dialogue partner of ASEM Education Ministers meeting. So we look much forward to contributing this year to the Education Minister meeting in Thailand. And the idea here is that we provide research, we provide policy recommendations, which then feed into the preparation process of this ministerial meeting. And our ARC 8 topic is absolutely suitable for what we're talking about at the ministerial meeting. And today it's about a Vision 2030 and inclusive and diverse higher education in Asia and Europe. We also run a kind of capacity building project. We call it our design thinking laboratory for higher education leaders and managers. Here the focus is more on people who are in charge of innovation and research in their own institutions. The first edition, it's an online training. It's called ASEM InnoLabs 1 on the university's role in data science and artificial intelligence innovation ecosystems. This project is new, so we are learning a lot here about online trainings and design thinking laboratories. We work together with Fudan University on this. Last but not least, this is an area where we engage secondary school teachers and schools. The ASEM Classroom Network, this is the only platform in Asia and Europe which actually facilitates connectivity and exchanges between schools. We have been running this project for the past 20 years and have created a sustainable network really for teachers working on this field. We are aware that secondary school education is not necessarily or not yet a focus for the ASEM education process, but we believe it's very important to bringing both regions together and build a foundation then for tertiary education. We focus in our work in 2021 on IoT, big data and AI and secondary schooling, as well as health and well-being of teachers. Now I go back to the Education Strategy 2030, and there were 3 sub-themes under our strategic objective, which we discussed today. The first one is inclusive exchanges, the second one is balanced exchanges, and the third one focuses on virtual mobility. So what have we learned over the past year, and how do we see also it will change, or what can be good suggestions and recommendations for the ASEM community? On the first priority, inclusive exchanges. Well, how do we contribute? I think the biggest contribution we currently have is our ARC 8 project. not only because it focuses on the topic, but we produce a report which we are currently working on with over 20 experts. And one chapter is specifically on mobility. So we believe that we will gain a lot of insights from this report. We have conducted over 30 expert interviews with leaders across Asia and Europe. And this report will be ready, will be launched on time for the ministerial meeting. Then we have started with NEON, a UK-based organization, on a national equity policy in higher education across all ASEM countries. You might remember emails coming from myself or my colleague Rika on this. If you have not given yet your feedback, you still have some time to do it. But we hope that we can launch this outcomes of this report also in the next 1.5 months. We supported the Erasmus Student Network and consortia of other institutions on the ASEM survey, which we believe is also one of the first surveys where we can get concrete data on social inclusion, engagement, and mobility, especially in the current times. And when we talk about inclusion, and that is across all our projects, we focus currently on 2 areas which we are able to solve. And one is inclusion when it comes to the socio-economic background. Here we fund our participants, so everybody who joins our activities will be financially supported by us. And this is something which we can guarantee. When it comes to inclusion and mixed abilities, here we have spent significant efforts over the past year to increase efforts to enhance access to information. We have made good experiences with running webinars and conferences and see how accessible are these actually for people with mixed abilities and with disabilities. And we also spend, we have certain funding, certain budget lines for specific needs of people when it comes to mixed abilities. Inclusion when it comes to the digital divide, we haven't found yet the best solution for it, but I commented in the chat that whenever we apply for funds and when we also engage, when we use our donor budgets, we try that the budget can also be used in such a way that partially digital infrastructure can be supported. This is obviously in our case only possible on a smaller scale, but if you want to tackle this, large-scale budgets are needed. When it comes to priority 2.2, to stimulate balanced exchanges, we would like to highlight here that in the past, we always focused on a balanced distribution of our projects. I think this is also something which we have to increase and enhance in the ASEM education process, that if we run physical projects, we need to have a better distribution where these projects take place. And now, as we are all moving virtually, at least ensure that the partner organizations who are running these activities are balanced and come from Asian European countries. All our projects are, when we select participants, they are selected through open calls. So you will, unless the project has only 20 participants, you will most of the time find a representation of 51 nationalities. And of course, balanced exchanges and mobilities is also a balanced diversity of speakers and participants, but that is has to do more with the content and intellectual input you will get into these exchanges and mobilities. It's very often overlooked, we feel, and the focus is rather than on a geographical balance, but we need to look into really the speakers and the participants, the gender, the age, the abilities, the socioeconomic backgrounds, and the access to opportunities. When we run activities, we always check if participants had opportunities before and which ones, because it's important to also select the unusual suspects and not only those who are already interested in international exchanges and mobilities. Last but not least, when it comes to virtual mobility and exchange, we spend significant efforts, like probably every organization, on transforming our entire program portfolio to hybrid formats. We also are in the process of setting up an ASEM e-learning platform to reach wider audiences. So all of our activities which we run will be later accessible. The learning outcomes, the resources will be accessible to everyone in an easily digestible and accessible format. We focus on collaborative virtual sessions. I think there was earlier a question about how do you ensure that the intercultural exchanges or the intercultural learning takes place. We feel it is only possible if you have a very strong focus on collaboration, on engagements of tasks, group tasks, individual tasks, but everybody has to contribute to a joint output. Otherwise, it's difficult to keep participants and learners engaged. So our magic formula for now is an introduction of hybrid events, which combine several project elements. So first of all, it's awareness creation across ASEM. All of our projects include certain research and study element. All of them include e-learning activities. All of them include peer-to-peer on-site meetings and networkings. Well, but for this one, we have to wait this year still. But they have a local community outreach and an engagement. So the idea is to create a program ecosystem that integrates various forms and methods for mobility and exchanges. And that's what we are working towards too. You will see this when we share with you more open calls, and obviously happy to receive your feedback, and we rely on your support to make this happen. This, you see, we are divided into digital and face-to-face. We'll see what the future holds, but we are optimistic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leonie, for this great presentation. I can hear myself. Can you? Okay. Are there any questions at the moment? I see that Emily has raised her hand, but no? Okay. Okay, there were some technical issues, but I think they have been resolved. If there are not any sort of burning questions on anything on clarifications, then I would say we move on to our next panelist, to Dr. Smith. The floor is yours.
So thank you. Emily, would you share the screen, please?
Yes, it's uploading right now.
Okay.
You should be able to see it in a few seconds.
Yes. Would you mind if I tell you next page?
No, of course.
Okay. Thank you very much for the floor. My name is KJ Sung. I am the Director General of a small secretariat administering ASEM Dual Fellowship Program, which is a fellowship providing program in the ASEM region. Next page. Next, please. This is a fellowship granting program for university students and teachers in ASEM member countries. It was first proposed by Korea, France, and Singapore in ASEM 3 in the year 2000. Now it is still in operation. It is the 20th year of operation. During the past 20 years, we have supported more than 4,200 students and professors. The purpose of this program is to promote balanced exchanges. I mean, we are now, one of the major topic is balance. And this is exactly, this program exactly pursues that goal, balanced exchange, because unlike other fellowship programs, this program does not support individuals separately. Instead, we only support pairs of individuals, one from Asia, one from Europe. So this squarely fits into the idea of a balanced exchange. Next page, please. So as I told you, the basic feature of this whole ASEM Dual program is the pairing program. Oh, here I have a typo already, I'm sorry. And we found out that the pairs, once they are paired, students, once they are paired, after they finish their exchanges, we found out other students in those institutions continue exchanges. So when you support one exchange program for a pair of students, we found out that next year, other students from those two institutions continue exchanges. We found out as many as 95% of the exchange programs continued even after the financial support has stopped. It was first proposed in the year 2000 as a 5-year program, but it has been extended as many as 4 times. And currently, we have the mandate until year 2025. Well, one of the key words we are now discussing is the Action Plan 2030. I hope that ASEM would be once again endorsed until the year 2030. Okay, next page, please. This ASEM program is based on a very simple core principles, very simple one. The first one is, as I told you, the pairing. One from Asia, the other one from Europe. The second one is the standardization of the supporting unit. In the case of students, 1 semester, usually 4 months, and for professors, 1 month. And the next one is also the standardization of the supporting unit. In the case of students, they are given between 1,000 and 2,000 euros for a pair of students for each month. So if sometime they may receive 1,000 euros, each student may receive 1,000 euros each month. So this could be a very generous fellowship program in the ASEM region. For the professors, it's between 1,500 to 3,000 euros. Next page, please. Many people ask us, what is the value added of the ASEM program? I would tell them there are 3 aspects of value addedness in the ASEM program. The first is it is structure-based exchanges. Now, a pair of students would be exchanged. In order for them to be exchanged, there should be an exchange program. There should be an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding for exchanges between the 2 institutions. And we found many Asian and European universities engaged in new exchange MOUs. The second one is it enables sustainable exchanges, because finding partner students in the other region is virtually impossible for individuals. So when they find their parent students in the other region, the staff members in International Exchange Office can help them. Because they found the pairs from the other regions, they know which universities would like to engage in exchange with their university. So in the following years, those staff members strongly recommend their students to go to the other institutions they have arranged in the past years. And the third aspect is it has been proven very effective, especially for smaller sized member countries, to attract foreign students from the other regions in a balanced manner. Okay, next page, please. Currently, there are 8 programs. There used to be 2 more, Duo France and Duo Denmark, but they stopped operation. And Duo Korea is basically there twice. I mean, Duo Korea is there and Duo Korea Germany is there because Germany is going to co-fund the Duo Korea program starting from this year. Next, please. Each individual program is different. I mean, basically, they are almost the same, but there are some differences. One good example is Duo Belgium Wallonia. That program only supports exchanges of professors. Other programs, usually students. And another difference can be found in the case of Duo India, because India supports students and also professors. Next page, please. This is the total statistic during the past 20 years, how many students and professors we have supported. And to the right is the column, you see the total, and you see total number is increasing. The number will increase dramatically next year because Duo India has started, and Duo India program is much bigger than any of the previous existing programs. In fact, even if you combine all the other existing programs, it may be even smaller than Duo India. Okay, next page, please. This graph shows you the number of beneficiaries, excluding beneficiaries from the contributing donor countries, because donor country, there will be a pair, so half of the pairs will come from their donating members. So I excluded them. So these are the number of beneficiaries from each country without any financial contribution. And it turned out that Germany topped the list, followed by France, then UK, China. I mean, those are major big economies, as you can see. This is why I told you, I mean, if left alone, students will always try to go to bigger economies in the two regions. Okay, so I said this program it would be very effective for smaller sized economies to attract foreign students in a balanced manner. Next page, please. 2 years ago, there was an education ministers meeting, and at that time there was a stock-taking report by German partners, and they said this program is really enhances people-to-people connectivity, and balanced mobility is achieved, and it's a structure-based program. And so they said there was a unanimous support for the continuation of the program. Next page, please. Of course, we are worried about the impact of this COVID-19 pandemic. First thing I can tell you is that most of the programs continued as usual. Of course, there are some delays and cancellation in the programs because of the COVID-19. Currently, 6 out of 7 programs continued as usual. One exception was Singapore. Singapore last year stopped all exchange program. So that was one exception. Competition rate, however, was a little bit reduced as expected. And many of the exchange programs that have been approved turned out to be postponed. They asked a postponement of their program later this year, or even sometimes earlier next year, 2022. And most of the programs approved their postponement. And the single mobility was also approved in most of the programs. The single mobility, by that, what I mean is that because of the pandemic, one student may want to continue exchange while other students does not want to continue exchange. Then that will become a single mobility. In most of the programs, that single mobility was approved. DO India started rather late last year. So if we exclude that, in general, we found out about 40% of the ORDs just continued exchanges. Cancellation has occurred due to safety reasons in some cases. We found out about 10% of the ORDs canceled their nomination, but most of them wanted postponement. So later this year or early next year, I think there will be huge surge of exchanges. Now, here we are talking about the virtual exchanges, right? So what can ASEM do for virtual mobility? Well, there was some discussion, but virtual mobility was not allowed under ASEM Duo. However, a blended or hybrid mobility is approved. That is, students actually go to the other countries, but in there, because of the pandemic or whatever, when they receive education online, then that is allowed. Of course, in the coming years, we have to discuss about the possibility of including supporting virtual mobility in the ASEM Duo context. One possibility is that, as was mentioned in the keynote speech, if the virtual exchange is not completely online, but if it includes some physical exchange in the later period, then we may be able to support that. And blended mobility is already approved. Complete virtual mobility, I'm not sure. Currently, it's not allowed. Who knows? Some members may consider supporting this virtual mobility, because virtual mobility does not necessarily mean the cost is zero. Okay, next page, please. Oh, so this is the statistics of the current ASEM program. Okay, next page, please. Currently, the biggest problem in ASEM is the amount of contribution, imbalance of contribution between the two regions. Since 2008, as many as 76% of financial contribution was made by the Asian partners. So we ASEM Secretariat would be happy if more European partners take part in the program as a contributing member. And continuation, I believe, is the key in any international programs. So more contributing member into the ASEM would be very critical for this kind of continuation. Next page, please. We found out that some smaller sized economies found more interest in our program. So I hope that in the future we may see more contributing members. Of course, the best way ASEM can expand is the contribution by the European Commission. Then all ASEM member countries can benefit. Of course, I tried to contact the Commission several times in no avail, but who knows, in the future they may change their mind. Thank you very much for your listening. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sung. Are there any questions right away? Anything that maybe needs clarification? Otherwise, we will move on to the next speaker, and you have the chance to ask questions at the end when everyone has given their input. I don't see any hands, so I would like to give the floor to Adrian Beal.
Okay, thank you very much, Nina. Let me just try and share my screen. Can you now see my screen?
Yes, it works, yeah.
Okay. Right, I'm going to speak a little bit about the way that the EU-funded programs for mobility are looking at this issue of virtual exchange, virtual mobility, blended mobility in our plans for the future. And in fact, it's a key time. Actually, lots of things have come together at the same time. This turn of the year is the time when the Erasmus Plus program comes to an end, and the new program is born. It's a new funding period for the European Union. We are launching some new initiatives, particularly in the area of education, with the European Education Area, Digital Education Action Plan, and of course we are coping with the COVID pandemic, which has brought some of these topics to very much to the surface. But the question of resilience of the education sector, and the way that education can be, should be delivered. So all these things coming together, it's a very interesting time, but it's good in a sense that all those things are happening at the same time, because I think it allows to take lots of different aspects into account. So a little about the way that Erasmus Plus supports cooperation between Asia and Europe. The primary measure is what we give the rather puzzling acronym of ICM. It stands for International Credit Mobility, but actually it's the classic Erasmus exchange So exchange not only for students, but also for staff in the higher education sector. And up to now, under the program that's just finished, this has moved about 63,000 people between Europe and other ASEM countries. So I'm including in that ASEM members that are maybe outside our classic Asia region. So I'm including Russia in those figures. So it offers the individuals a wider academic experience, and it offers them better intercultural understanding. It's more than just the benefit for the individuals, though. In order to manage these projects, the two universities involved have to have an agreement. They have to be well integrated in the sense they have to recognize the credits that come from a student's study experience when they return home. And in fact, they are often test beds for wider cooperation. They're often sort of trampoline towards further research, more complex projects, perhaps joint curricula, because you are getting the universities to link up in that respect. And of course, the benefits aren't only for the individuals who are moving. A wider range of people benefit from what we call internationalization at home. So they benefit from visiting academics. And we try to ensure that a student's experience when he or she comes back is broadcast to his or her fellow students. So we try and make sure that there's a wider range of beneficiaries than just the people. This is going to continue post 2020. It's going to continue in the new program. Here you can see a little bit about the way it's shaped up to now. It's funded by our external relations budget. So actually, the priorities attached to different regions of the world match the priorities for our external cooperation with those regions. So actually, you see that Russia benefits from a lot more mobility than Asia, the classic Asia, if you like. And when I say classic Asia, I'm talking about this second region in the middle of your picture there. So South Asia, Southeast Asia, Mongolia, China. And there we have more incoming mobility to Europe than outgoing. The idea is that the beneficiaries of these programs are the Asian students and staff. Whereas for the industrialized countries, as we call them in the rest of Asia, Japan, Korea, Asia Pacific, Australia, we have more balanced mobility funded by the program, so about 50-50. Let's think a little bit also about what is behind this idea of mobility. I mean, from the beginning, it had two objectives. I think first it was to enable the universities involved to internationalize. There was this thirst for sharing knowledge between universities when it first started inside Europe. So it was recognized you can't function only in your country. Knowledge doesn't know borders. So a lot of cooperation across borders within Europe when Erasmus was set up. And also think back to sort of the mid-80s, the beginnings, if you like, of the European project. You needed to get politicians to understand each other better, you needed businesses to understand each other better, and you needed the citizens to understand each other better. And this was a bit the thinking behind Erasmus in the origin, that you should benefit from this experience of another country. Go and live there for a while. You learn this is where the intercultural aspect comes in. You gain a better understanding of other countries. You are more open to other ways of thinking. And this is what we have to try and replicate when we are talking about virtual mobility. It's this intercultural experience, this better understanding that's part of higher education, but it's also part of the rest of Erasmus+. We have projects for youth mobility, youth cooperation, and we also have the Erasmus Plus virtual exchange. Now, in the current program, this has been piloted in what we call the South Mediterranean region, and this was to give a wider range of young people this intercultural experience of reaching out, talking, working on common projects with European young people, and it was actually partly to deal with the impossibility of traveling from certain countries. I mean, I'm talking about Syria, Libya, where the classic mobility was impossible. So virtual exchange was a way of bringing young people together. So this type of higher education mobility, though, will continue in the new program. We also have another mobility related program, Erasmus Mundus. These are joint programs, so primarily European consortia of universities offer a joint program, and the EU funds scholarships for students from all over the world to take part in these programs. You can see that a good part of the scholarships for non-Europeans goes to ASEM member countries. This again will continue in the new program, but we're going to make it more attractive for universities from the rest of the world to take part. Some changes to the rules, for example, it'll be much more attractive for a university from India, from Australia, to take part as a hosting institution in the new program. It's not been taken up. It's been possible up to now, but it's not been taken up mainly because of the rules that apply. We also have an instrument called capacity building for higher education. This is a type of partnership project that involves European universities on the one side and Asian universities on the other. It's also open to other regions, so South America, Africa, the neighborhood region. And they work together on developing new teaching, developing or building human resources, the teaching staff, skills, competencies at the institution, or they can work together on internationalization issues within a university or within that particular country's education policy. So these again will continue in the new program, but they're only open to developing emerging parts of the world. They're a type of cooperation policy. So we use development cooperation funding to fund these international partnerships. And again, as I mentioned before, we have those open to youth partnerships based on the same principles. As from 2021, there'll be a lot of continuity in these opportunities, but think about a slightly changing landscape. The European Union is keen to push certainly 3 of these 6 key priorities. Everything that the Commission funds will have to match this move towards the green transition, towards digital skills, and a more international dimension. So even what we do in Europe, we want to try and show the rest of the world and work with the rest of the world on these topics. And so besides Erasmus Plus, those important topics in the education sector will be the Digital Education Action Plan, developing new skills and boosting, strengthening of the digital landscape through which education can be offered, and the European education area. And there, again, digital is an important part, higher education is an important part, and a particular focus on teaching. So all these are opportunities to see the way that we use the assets of digital in a harmonious way that can improve the quality of teaching, but it can also make it reach further. You know, this need to be inclusive is very much part of the new Erasmus Plus program. So those synergies, I think the synergies between ASEM and Erasmus Plus, I mean, worldwide, I think we're tackling common challenges. We've got a health crisis, we've got a climate crisis. We want connectivity to be an aspect of our relations with the rest of the world. And this is not just the classic connectivity, digital, energy, transport, but it's also people-to-people connectivity. There's also the question of artificial intelligence, I think, which we'll need to think about. If we're talking about new ways of learning, we need to take account of the huge changes that are in store for us as artificial intelligence is rolled out. I think we also want to make sure that we can share experience better. This is an important part of Erasmus Plus, that and this is the way we try to make sure it is more inclusive, that we share the outcomes, we share the results of all these projects that I've mentioned. And I was asked to show you a little bit, for example, the Erasmus Plus project results platform. This is the key way that we try and make these projects replicable or inspirational to a wider range of users. If you like, I can, if I still have time, I could give a little live demonstration.
Sure, you have about 2-3 minutes left, so
okay,
feel free to do
just
it.
2 or 3 minutes. Let's. Here is, I hope you can see it, the project results platform. It's relatively intuitive how to use it. If you use the advanced search, you see you can choose Erasmus Plus as the program. You'll have to get used a little bit to the jargon of the different aspects of the program. But if we take this, for example, capacity building in higher education, which I mentioned before, is a sub-program of our key action for cooperation. We'll have the same structure in the new program, or a very similar program, very similar structure. If you put in those as a search factor, you can find 900 of these capacity building projects. So everything that's been selected from 2015 to 2020 with their start year. And then you can also, for example, you can drill down and you say, I want to see the search projects for Vietnam. And it shows you 74 projects. What you can also do, maybe a little tip, is that you can look for results only, because I think this is the most useful part of the project results platform, that for completed projects are obliged to publish a range of results. So here we have, for example, a project about IT in Vietnamese higher education institutions. It shows you, it gives you a description of the project, you see which partners are involved, and here at the bottom, you can see the results. So the results of the project in sort of organizational mode, but also the outputs. So we see the seminar, we see some outputs for a curriculum development project, for example. You will see the curriculum. So I'd encourage people in the meeting to have a look at the different types of projects that are already being funded, to see their results, and also to maybe take them as food for thought for a possible project to submit in the new calls for proposals, which will start under this program in 2022. So the first selection for these type of international projects will not be this year, but it will be in the second year of the new program. So you've got time to look at what the opportunities are and to consider putting forward a proposal. That's all I'm going to say for the moment, and perhaps I can leave some more time for other speakers and for questions at the end of the session.
Thank you very much, Adrian, and also for presenting the Erasmus Plus project results platform. I think sharing good practice examples is really a very important sort of pillar for the ASEM education process. And maybe you could post the link to it also in the chat box, so the participants have some time later on to sort of browse this platform. Are there any sort of burning questions for clarification right now? I don't see any hands. I saw there were some questions to Dr. Sung on the ASEM education, on the ASEM Duo program, but we will come to this later. And then I would like to give the floor to Shantavid.
Hello.
Hello.
Good day. Good day to all my dear colleagues and all distinguished participants. Okay. I'm trying to be very brief about the organizational information. Senior Righthead was originally conceived as Righthead in 1959, founded in Singapore by UNESCO and international.
I'm sorry, Shantavid, to interrupt you. Can you, right now we can see your desktop, but we can't see a presentation. Maybe you can just open it.
ต้องกดตรงสไลด์ที่รายชื่อคนทั้งหมด Can you now see the slides?
Yes, now perfect. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, it was founded by UNESCO and International Association of Universities in collaboration with the Ford Foundation, and then trying to develop this organization into more regional matters. อ๋อโทษทีค่ะ มันไม่ไปอ่ะไม่ไปอ่ะไหนอ่ะไม่ไปเป็นให้ได้ไหมโอเคเลื่อนสิเลื่อนสิเลื่อนสิเลื่อนสิ So we are trying to move the slides from here.
Okay.
So let me continue on a little bit on our organization. Actually, when the region was trying to make it more really regional, including all the Southeast Asian nations in the organization, the approval was obtained by the Royal Thai government to host Righthead under the umbrella of Southeast Asia
Okay, I see now that Shantavit unfortunately is gone. It seems that her video sort of was broken off. Maybe we wait a few seconds if she gets back the connection. Otherwise, we will maybe just quickly jump to a question or a statement that Frederick de Decker has brought up for Dr. Soong. In the meantime, Shantavit, are you back? Okay, maybe Frederick, would you in the meantime like to ask your question?
Okay, I can do that, Nina, no problem. Thank you, Dr. Sung, for already hinting to some answer in the chat, because we are discussing, among other things today, balancing mobility, and we have had some, as I put in the chat, very interesting experience with ASEM duos fellowships. But unfortunately, it happens sometimes that one of the students in the pair of students has to drop out for one reason or another, and then that's quite disappointing, of course, for the other student. And we were thinking whether there wouldn't be any possibilities in future to look at balance from another perspective. That could be on the whole region, Europe in general, Asia in general, that could be on country level and so on. And as you've seen from the chat, Magali Sunen from our ministry has added that this is not a particular Ghent University problem, but also many other Flemish higher education institutions are in favor of looking at balancing at another level than at the individual level.
I wish I have that authority.
Yeah.
Wish I had that authority. Well, to be frank with you, I'm just a secretariat, so we were instructed by the donating members, and currently their rules only allow exchanges at individuals level from the same institution. Because one of the reasons why they cannot allow more flexibility in the institution or country level is because they have gone through all those selection processes. And if you find some other substitutes later, then they did not go through the selection process, and it's not fair. But anyhow, in that case, a single mobility, only that person's exchange is still allowed. Then there will be some remaining financial resources, right? Those financial resources can be utilized later. So in that sense, you may be relieved a little bit. I'm sorry for that. And please note one more thing. Dual Belgian Flanders will not be available after August of this year. Thank you very much for your inquiry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering the question. Shantavit, are you back with us?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Sorry,
let's continue. Yeah.
Okay, we just briefly thought we took the time to answer a question, and I will give the floor back to you now.
Okay. Now allow me to just focus only on the Asian International Mobility for Students, which is our AIMS program, which is the regional flagship initiatives that we are now exploring possibility of virtual or blended mobility alongside physical mobility that we have been used to during the past 10 years. This is to address the disruption caused by COVID-19 pandemic. In moving forward, the AIMS program has been focusing on mainly on intra-regional collaboration, including the ASEAN plus 3 country as well. So we hope to be able to move on to offer inter-regional collaboration. That's why this is a good platform for us to be giving the information about mobility going on from the European side as well as the Asian side. So maybe in the future, we hope that there will be the bridging on this matter. For our program, for the AIMS program, is multilateral. It's a multilateral and collaborative student exchange program, trying to connect the region and beyond, operating on the basis of self-sufficiency and solidarity, and particularly balanced mobility. We have a network of 78 universities amongst 9 country members. Offer also a semester exchange to undergraduate students in 10 academic disciplines. We have accumulated participation of students from 9 countries within the past 10 years, up to almost 5,000 students so far. We have been also able to achieve balanced mobility all along these past 10 years. And also the uniqueness of this program is the involvement of the government along with the participating universities, and also the gathering of nationalities within the discipline area at the host institution. So senior right has been, actually, the program, the AIMS program, has been disrupted by the COVID pandemic. We decided to do a survey early last year after the breakout of the pandemic. We did the survey to examine the situation of member university to see how they cope up with the pandemic, and how do they adjust themselves in terms of teaching and learning approach for their students, and how they accommodate application for student exchange. Physical mobility has been, of course, significantly impacted, and delivery has gone online since early last year, including regional dialogues with AIMS stakeholders. Actually, we had steering committee meeting online in July last year, and we had annual review meeting participated by all participating university and representative of 10 discipline areas in all the 9 countries online as well, which was a bit really first experience for us. You know, some technical problem and things like that also occur. And when we found out that in last year we were able to register only 124 students to take part in the exchanges, a drop completely of 85% from the previous year's figures. So it's really, everybody was afraid about about what's happening, and also the limitation of quarantine requirement, which allow more time for the student to be held at the host institution as well as when they come home. So students are discouraged from applying to the program. Okay. Well, from the survey that we did, about 60% completely closed the campus. Another 40% still operating as usual. However, for those operating are also employing the online learning for the newly admitted AIM students or the current students who are study at their home country. So some experience just get started among participating universities, trying to offer the online courses to their exchange student in another country instead of, being present in the host university. So some are start doing that. We continue to pursue information from our university network and hope to be able to come up with some example of good practices that we can post on our website, on the AIMS website, which can be accomplished sometime later this year. So that's something that we think that will happen. So next, AIMS dialogue on virtual mobility. When we organize the meeting, whether it's steering committee meeting or the annual review meeting, discussion has been on the idea of shifting to online teaching and learning, and also prompted more attention to assessment procedures. How can we do that, for the exchange student? Because the concept of the AIMS program is balance mobility and also credit transferability have to be there. So it's a must for this program. So we are a bit concerned about assessment procedures that can be acceptable to all the 78 university network, and also what kind of pedagogical approaches that each university in each country will be adopting. So this is also a major concern of all the members, that how can we integrate socio-cultural aspects to the mobility experience virtually. So we are not present physically in the host country, but we are still in our home country. But how can we absorb and understand socio-cultural matters of the host country or host university? So this is something that have been discussed seriously and try to figure out how to do that, which I will talk about this later on when the idea of developing courseware for each discipline area under our program. So AIMS University are actually actively exploring the potential for and benefits of virtual mobility. So the good thing that it has good flexibility and convenience for students, and also for funding matters as well. Maybe we can, with the same amount of budget, we can expand coverage for more students to participate in the scheme. So maybe utilizing ICT to obtain the same benefit as physical mobility without having to travel can be done. And it can be flexible for student and teacher also in the teaching learning process. And another important thing that our keynote speaker also mentioned about inclusiveness. We think that using the virtual mobility can provide for inclusiveness, engaging students in the process of mobility, virtual mobility. More number of students can join, whether they belong to different gender or disability or social economic status. They can also have a chance to join. And also expanded collaboration in the sense that maybe a possibility of inter-regional collaboration for the AIMS program. How can we connect to the Erasmus or other European mobility scheme ongoing at the moment? Because we are quite institutionalized in the sense that government taking responsibility for their own university and students, as well as university cluster are working as a cluster by discipline areas. So there are good possibility of complex collaboration in that sense of many layers of collaborations going on. So this lead to national measures implemented. We collected these measures presented by national authorities who are our steering committee members, as well as joining our annual review meeting. So each country are developing and promoting blended learning. Of course, other speaker has mentioned that as well. So this is happening now, adjusting national credits regulations to allow for online courses credit that can be transferable, because in the past, maybe the online courses are not very well recognized. Now we are seriously considering how we can give credits, for the online courses. For the online courses, beyond this is also the cluster of universities in the same discipline area are actually consulting each other now to develop courseware that can be used by all the member institutions in that discipline area. So this is another strength that AIMS program is really strengthening the collaboration. So providing increased autonomy to university in design credit requirement of the program. So usually each country will have a national standard of credit requirement. So now consideration of providing more autonomy to the university to look into that. And we can discuss among the cluster of universities, participating university, to adopt the new idea. Providing online workshop and training for students and faculty to maximize teaching and learning experience. So actually, AIMS platform provide guided national measures in areas that I just cited earlier. So there are also few other things that they are also discussing in details, which I'm not going to go through that at this point, since we have limited time. So these are the 10 areas, discipline areas, that 78 universities pick and choose to join the cluster. Not 78 offer all the 10 discipline areas. So each university may pick 2 or 3 discipline areas that they are strong and have high quality to showcase to the AIMS platform. So agriculture, biodiversity, economics, engineering, environmental management, science, food science and technology, hospitality and tourism, international business, language and culture, and marine science. So we have a combination of natural sciences, applied sciences, humanities, as well as social sciences. So a good balance of different discipline area. So way forward for us that we are foresee through the communication and interaction among participating countries and participating universities is that as the unpredictability, disruption, and advancement of ICT, particularly the employment of artificial intelligence, will demand a new way of thinking about mobility and the roles of physical mobility versus virtual mobility or blended mobility that we foresee coming up. If physical mobility cannot be implemented at this point, maybe another year or 2 before it can come back in full force. we might be happy or satisfied with virtual mobility that can also help the movement of academic work by the student or by the staff or researcher, that they can work together in the sense. So maybe looking into the interregional efforts that we are anticipating to work with the European counterpart, we would like to maybe explore and do some piloting for interregional mobility between our AIMS program and the mobility scheme under the European Commission. So I am sure that with the improved software application, I'm sure that, you know, with the disruption of the pandemic, of other things, you know, travel limitation and this and that, maybe I think many software engineer or initiator of software application will certainly improve and come up with a good kind of platform or software or application that will allow us to be interactive more than what we are doing now by Zoom or by Google Meet or that limited way of communication that we are stuck with at the moment. I think that improvement will come, you know, very rapidly along with the unmanned driver for vehicles that will be in the future. So that's what we would like to share with you all, and any suggestion or recommendation or your guided advice will be very much welcome. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nathalie, for your presentation. We are running a little bit out of time, so please, if you have any questions, raise your hand or ask a question. I think we can allow a few, but not too many, unfortunately. There is one right now for you, Shantavid, from Darren McDermott. He's asking, is the AIMS program exploring this prospect of using digital credentials in credit transfer / recognition for its proposed virtual exchange initiatives? Would you like to reply to this, Shantavi?
เปิดแชทไม่เห็นนะไม่เห็นเพราะว่าเมื่อกี้มันมีอ่านให้หน่อยโอเค How the AIMS program can evaluate student learning outcome by virtual exchange. Yeah, I think that's something that we have been worried about, and the cluster, the discipline area cluster university member are discussing among themselves within the group how we can manage that. Still in the process of development.
Okay, thank you. We have a few sort of more general questions to discuss. I'm just asking the Secretariat now if you would like to move on, or if we should leave some more time for discussion.
I think that we would better move on. unless there is a very, very pressing question, because we only have 5 minutes to go into the break. But maybe it's also good to know we will go into group sessions after the break. So there will be more time there for further discussions. And the experts will also take part in the group sessions, I think, most of them.
Okay, good. Then, well, I give the floor back to you, Nadia.
Okay.
And thank you very much to all the speakers for being there, for making the time to present their organizations and projects.
Thank you. Also, big thanks to all the experts from the Secretariat, of course, for all your interesting contributions, and also Nina to moderate this session. You have all certainly given us food for thought for the upcoming brainstorming sessions. Before sending you to a well-deserved coffee break or tea break, we would like to ask you first to do a little assignment. Through an interactive online tool called WooClap. I don't know if some of you have used it before. It's not so difficult. After a while, you will get a QR code, and there will also be a link in the chat. So you can either use the QR code or the link to open the WooClap. And in the WooClap, you will see 6 proposals or ideas for future ASEM education initiatives. You see the 6 here on your on the screen. The first one is virtual summer schools. The second, ASEM education, higher education fairs. The third one is the idea of conferences or seminars on sustainability in internationalization and mobility. A fourth one is a suggestion to set up an online platform to promote Erasmus Plus opportunities, and calls for proposals for Erasmus Plus to set up Asian European mobility and partnerships. And the sixth one is an online platform to showcase and promote good practices on inclusive, blended and virtual exchange programs. So you will get, if you open the link or if you scan the QR code, you will get these 6 options to rate. You can give a rate from or a number from 1 to 5. 1 meaning you think that it's totally not interesting for your ministry or organization, and 5, it's completely or extremely interesting. And of course, you can also give a score of 2, 3, and 4. So you can just take the blue spot and drag it to the right score for each of these ideas. And at the end, don't forget to click the blue button. Here on the slide, it's in Dutch, but probably it's sent in English or in your own language. Just press the blue button before you go into the break. And we see each other back in 10 minutes. So this slide will be online or will stay online, so you can find the QR code and the link in the chat. Yes, Mr. Sung, you have a question?
I'm sorry. Before we go into smaller groups, I want to clarify one small thing. In my presentation, I used the term blended hybrid mobility. But it seems to me the way others are using that terminology is different from the way I meant. What I meant in my blended or hybrid mobility means that physically you are in other countries, but in that country you are taking courses online. That's the situation I had in mind. But here, when I hear your discussions, when you say blended mobility, is that some part of the education is virtual, some part is a physical actual mobility.
Yes, that's right. That's indeed the meaning that we have of it. So sorry for the confusion.
No. It was my I mean, what you call negligence for clarification. Just for clarification to everybody, okay?
Okay, thank you. So please go to the WooClap and do the rating, and then you can take a 10 minutes break. So we see each other back in 10 minutes, which is 11:45 European time. And I'm afraid the Asians have to calculate themselves because I'm not so good in time zones. Okay, I hope that everyone is back. Before we move on to the smaller groups, the breakout sessions, we just would like to show you the results screen of the little poll we did. And we see that the winners, we have decided to select two winners, two most highest rated ideas, which are the conferences and our seminars on sustainability in internationalization and mobility, and the fifth one on collecting and promoting good practices on inclusive, blended and virtual exchange programs and formats. What we are going to do now is you will be assigned in a breakout group. So that will go automatically. After this, you will move to the group automatically. You don't have to do anything for that. And with our kind moderators, you can discuss these two selected initiatives from a specific perspective. There are three perspectives. Perspective one group discusses the initiatives from the perspective of policymakers. So you all have to pretend, if you are not a policymaker, that you are a policymaker. A second group discusses the initiatives from an institutional or a university level. So you have to pretend that would you be interested in the initiative as, for example, a university leader or internationalization manager in a university. And the third group will discuss the initiative from a student's perspective. So you have to think if this kind of initiative would be beneficial for you as a student. The three moderators you will see in our group are Dr. Shantavid for the institutional level. Olivia, she's from the Erasmus Student Network. She is a student. She will guide you through the discussion of the student's perspective. And Nina, you know already, will guide you through the discussion of the policymakers level. So you can't choose either of these levels. You will be assigned to one group, and the moderators will explain a little bit more on what to do. So the session will not be recorded, the brainstorming session. So please feel free to give all your ideas and thoughts. And after that, we will come back to plenary session to discuss all your ideas. So good luck and have an interactive discussion.
The ASEM Education Secretariat has decided not to record the brainstorming sessions. If you are interested in taking part in a similar exercise in the future, please make sure to register for our upcoming workshops. Welcome back in plenary session. I hope you all had fruitful discussions and meaningful exchanges. Since we were discussing virtual exchange today, we thought we would put your own technical and digital skills to the test. So thank you for playing along with us. From what I've witnessed, things were going well. I've jumped a bit around from group to group, and I think that aside from maybe a few connection issues, things were going very well. And I think these technical problems show once again that access to good internet connection cannot be taken for granted, and that even for the privileged users we are, technical aspects can still be a challenge for online collaboration. So now, without further ado, I would move on to sharing results. We would start with group one, which was moderated by Nina and focused on the policy level perspective. Nina, how did it go? Were our participants inspired by these two potential new initiatives?
Thank you very much, Emily. Yeah, I think we had some great contributions. First, I wanted to say sorry to Nicoletta, who was just about to say something and was cut off. And I think that was maybe part of my poorly managed time skill. So I'm very sorry that you were cut off, and feel free to just, add your comment maybe in the chat box. Yes, so the first initiative, it was very interesting because it turned out that I think the different participants also had sort of different ideas in mind when it came to sustainability. We were discussing that it's not necessarily connected to, ecological, to the ecological dimension, but other participants were also thinking about just, sustainability in terms of more the sort of endurance and long-term engagement of a project, rather than anything to do really with ecological aspects. So I guess there was sort of more a discussion on or that we have different understandings of sustainability, how it is sort of meant in this sort of background. And another point that was raised in this remark is also to define who the audience is. So are we addressing this to higher education institutions, or who exactly is it, and to sort of make it more fit for that purpose? Yeah, we have added value. Just I think in general is that bringing the ASEM education brings together people from different regions, and let me have a look, because there were a lot of things said. Yeah, just talking about sort of the different ideas or different definitions that we had in mind when thinking about sustainability. And that means, yeah, different things for different people and depends on the perspective. And I think we could maybe move to the second initiative.
Yes.
Yes. Excuse me. The second initiative. I think there was a lot of discussion on it, because I think promoting good practice and virtual exchange is one thing, but there was a lot of agreement that sort of maintaining such a platform is a lot of work, that it needs to sort of be integrated into maybe conferences or other initiatives that bring people together, that, you know, foster people-to-people connectivity, because a platform itself will not sort of be sustainable. And as soon as sort of conferences or other initiatives stop, the platform will also sort of probably not be used much anymore. So it has to be clarified who maintains it, and also who the audience is, if it is directed at policymakers or at higher education initiatives. And I think there was really there were a lot of different points. Another point was also to really see that I think within this education process, we should try to really not have like many different small initiatives, but to really make sure that, I mean, there are bigger projects and flagship initiatives that are well established, like SHARE or ASEF, and to really sort of find synergies there and maybe sort of integrate or cooperate with them on ideas, and to sort of use this network. And I think there were lots of other points, and Magali, if you would like to add something very important, I think feel free to do so. But otherwise, I would say I'm done for this group. Okay, so yeah.
Okay, if Magali doesn't want to add anything, I would thank Nina for this very comprehensive overview. I think we understood from your group's input that a lot of upstream work will be needed if we want to organize such a conference on sustainability and internationalization and mobility, to make sure that everyone has the same understanding of the concept of sustainability we would be using. Regarding the online platform, I understood from your group's input that the continuity would need to be looked at, that responsibility would also need to be clearly defined beforehand, to avoid that such a wonderful platform is not used in the practice. And of course, we are always open to organize synergies where possible. So thank you, Nina and Magali, for the technical help. Thank you, Group 1, for this very constructive input. I think we can continue with Group 2, which was moderated by Dr. Chantevet. together with Nadia. I think Nadia will give the overview. How did it go? Could you share your group's whiteboard, please, and give us a brief
Yes,
summary of your group's input?
it's coming. You can see it. Can you see my whiteboards? Yeah, okay.
Yes, we can.
In our group, actually, we got stuck to one of the two ideas. We focused on the online platform for virtual exchanges because it was little bit a mix, our discussion between the discussion on virtual exchanges as such and the platform. So the post-its are a little bit referring to either of the two. If we come to the platform, there were quite some positive ideas on what the added value could be for institutional representatives or people from universities. It could be a good way to showcase good practices for window shopping because it's virtual exchanges is a new format that still has to be promoted, or for many teachers and lecturers it's a new concept and they don't know how to start with it. So a kind of platform with good practices could be a good way to learn from each other, also with a focus on the different disciplines so that lecturers can find examples from their own discipline. It can be a platform where different nationalities can develop something together and also create intercultural understanding. It could be broader than only good practices on virtual exchanges, could also include courseware. So it was a kind of, say, positive idea on how this platform could develop. Then when it came to pitfalls and obstacles, I think we have mainly discussed general obstacles or conditions for success of virtual exchange as such. Of course, a lot depends on the lecturer. Lecturers should be innovative to interact with students because interaction seems to be a very important, crucial point in exchanges. Then, yeah, the issue of credentialing and recognition came along. That's, of course, a difficult discussion, could be technical, but a few points that has been said that there should be a good way of mutual recognition and quality assurance between both regions. Another thing that came up is that there should be also small and targeted units of learning. So the exchange should be flexible, could be a combination of physical and virtual exchange, as we have mentioned before. So blended formats, but with smaller learning units with micro credentialing linked to that should be considered. And I'm just going to check. Yeah, another thing that came along with the platform was that it's very important to find motivation to share, because sometimes very nice things are developed, but lecturers are not willing to share. And it was said it could be combined with some competition things, so to motivate lecturers to share their experiences, to gamify as you wish, to get their motivation to share as much as possible. I'm looking to Dr. Shantavid. Is there anything that I missed in our discussion? Do you want to add something?
Yeah, for the obstacles, I think it's a challenge to integrate social cultural learning into the process that is missing.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, that was more or less our discussion. So we focused just on one. I'm sorry for that, but it was an interesting discussion.
No need to apologize. I think we had said to all our moderators beforehand that qualitative input was much more important to us than quantitative ones. So thank you for this very detailed feedback on the online platform. I think you have definitely given us food for thoughts if we ever were to launch such a platform. You've touched upon many interesting aspects, such as how to create interactions, guarantee intercultural learning in an online setting, or blended setting for that matter. Also, you've touched upon recognitions, which we had tackled last week with our panel of experts. And also, very interestingly, you mentioned motivation levers, both for students, how can we motivate students to take part in such settings, but also the issue of sharing content, this time on the lecturer's end. So without further ado, we're now going to move to the last group, last but not least, group 3, which was moderated by Olivia. How did things go? Were our participants comfortable putting themselves in students' shoes?
Yes, they definitely were, and it worked wonderfully. And I think the first really interesting outcome is that when we discussed about the first one, we already, well, it kind of was easy to hear that, well, considering the students is important, is of course very important when trying to create something that is useful for the students. So that was really nice that this started right at the beginning. But the most interesting part was when we talked about the second initiative. There was in the beginning just silence because nobody really knew how we could discuss about this from the students' perspective. And I think the most interesting thing that we realized is that when we all voted on the most important initiatives, everyone voted not from the students' perspective, which resulted in this initiative getting the most votes, even though it doesn't really apply to the student perspective at all. So I think this is the most important outcome that we had in this session, is that when we talk about best practices, in mobility, for example, we should ask the students what they believe has worked out well. So these things were very interesting. So if you could scroll to the first one, then I will just briefly explain the other outcomes. Yes, one that we also discussed several times was we should make sure to actually create something with new added value, with new benefits, because there's already a lot of things. And right now there's a lot of advertising, especially in social media, which students use a lot these days. So we need to be careful not to just create one more initiatives among many that will not really stand out at all. So this is very, very important. Then also a very interesting point for this first initiative was, I think the first group already mentioned is terminology. Not everyone understands sustainability in the same way, and especially students also in their generation might have a completely different definition. So this is very important groundwork to agree on the terminology from the very start. So yes, and conditions for success. Yes, definitely. As I mentioned, engagement of students while conceptualizing, engaging them in the whole process, definitely. And also including both perspectives, Asia and Europe, in the context of what we are talking about right now here, very important. Okay, and then I would move on to the second one. So yeah, as I said, it was really difficult in the first few seconds because nobody had any input. But then we managed to talk about it. So and I think in the first column on the left is the most important term already, bridging the gap between policy and practices, because policy is probably the perspective that most of you have right now, but practices is the only perspective that students will see in the end. So we should focus on bridging that gap. And yes, that online fatigue and pitfalls, it's very important in the digital age right now with COVID. Another online platform, it's very easy to say that and to say, well, students will like this because they're the digital generation. But especially after COVID, digital and online fatigue, it is a thing, definitely. So it is hard to catch the attention of students and to actually be different, as I said before. And yes, conditions for success. I think this is also a nice thing to end my summary right now. If you're talking about best practices for something that is important for students, then you need to ask the students what worked out and what didn't. So I was I thought the session worked very, very well and everyone contributed amazing points. So I think it was very fruitful.
Thank you so much, Olivia, for this very clear overview. I think you gave us a very important takeaway message that when we design new initiatives, we should not forget beneficiaries, in this case, mostly students. So I think it was an interesting exercise to ask our participants to put themselves in the place of students, to ask themselves why should they take part in such an initiative, especially when you rightly mentioned it, everyone is a bit tired of all these online events and exchanges. Um, we will, of course, where possible, try to bridge policy and practice by bringing all the stakeholders and partners together to the table. I think we can play a role in that, definitely. And also what you mentioned about reinventing the wheel, we really want to avoid duplication, and we will definitely try to focus on synergies where we can find them. So thank you, Nina, Dr. Shentavit, and Olivia for presenting the results of your group's discussion. And thank you to our technical assistants, Magali and Caroline, for their help in agreeing to help us manage the whiteboard to make things a bit easier. I can tell you that the output of your exchanges and discussion will definitely prove instrumental to us and the drafting committee when we compile the first draft of the Action Plan 2030, which will be shared by email with all ASEM education partners and stakeholders. So if you have ideas you would like to share and haven't had the time to do so, you will have a second opportunity to do so in writing this time. So we're now halfway through our series of workshops. Registration are still open for the two last ones. So if you are interested and haven't registered yet, you still can. We hope to see at least some of you again next week. As announced earlier, this workshop was recorded, with the exception of the brainstorming sessions, because we really wanted you to be able to speak freely, be critical where needed. And the recording will be shared through our usual communication channels together with the speakers' PowerPoint presentations in a few days. If you have any additional questions, be it for us or our speakers, feel free to contact us using the email address on the screen. So the info@asem-education.org. We'll be more than happy to answer you. And before I conclude this workshop, I think there was a request from our communication partner in this, ASEF, to take a family picture, as it is a tradition. Maybe Leonie, you can explain what you would ask our participants to do so that you can manage to get a beautiful picture of all of us.
I think last time we had a very nice group photo by just everyone, not being well, not on mute, but showing his face into the camera and with a big smile. So I think the only people I see right now is Emily and Nadia. I see a few more, but there are a few people hidden behind the initials. So maybe we can get the shy people also out there, and then we do one group photo. 1 second. I think the best is to see the large gallery. Yes, it looks good. I think that's all. Okay, so we count until 3 and then we take a picture. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. We do take credit for any good photography, which we are posting on social media. So like us and share the posts and promote the ASEM course. Thank you so much. Thanks, Emily and Nadia.
Thank you all for turning on your camera on time. And thank you, Leonie and Asif, communication team, for their help, because we definitely could use it. On this note, I would now like to conclude our second workshop and thank our wonderful speakers and moderators for their stellar job. It was truly a team effort. And I would also like to thank you again for your active participation and insightful feedback. I wish you all a very nice day or a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.